Wonderful.
Okay.
Well, we'll get started here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Heidi Moon, the Communications Strategist for the Global Wellness Summit and Institute. Welcome to the second Wellness Economy Research webinar. Please introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to know where you're calling in from. And before we get started, some quick logistics. You can, in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you can choose either speaker view or gallery view. And please make sure to keep yourself muted when you are not speaking. I'm going to remute everyone shortly here. And at the end, if you have a question that you would like to share, please use the raise hand function feature that you can find in the participants section of your Zoom screen. And as we mentioned before, we'd love to see your faces, and please turn on your camera if you can. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Nancy Davis, our Chief Creative Officer and Executive Director, who will moderate today's program. Nancy, good morning, and over to you.
Thank you, Heidi, and welcome everyone. We're excited to have this very special session with our esteemed Global Wellness Institute research team featuring Tonya Callender, Catherine Johnston, and Ophelia Young. Research is the foundational pillar of the Global Wellness Institute. For almost 2 decades, this team has been responsible for identifying and codifying the global wellness economy, defining and deep diving on topics as far-ranging as wellness tourism, wellness real estate, physical activity, and mental wellness. Last year, they launched a series of wellness policy toolkits seeking to provide actionable information and evidence that would influence policy and therefore all of our lives. Before we hear from the research team, I'm always thrilled to introduce Susie Ellis, Chair and CEO of both the Global Wellness Summit and Global Wellness Institute, and the woman who took a tremendous leap of faith years ago, providing this industry with the research that would build businesses and ultimately help shape health and wellness on a global scale. Susie?
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Heidi. And thank you to all of you joining for this special opportunity. And I'm using the same term Nancy used, our esteemed researchers at the Global Wellness Institute. For those who might not be familiar with the Global Institute, we call it GWI for short. Our mission is empowering wellness worldwide. And we are a nonprofit 501c3 and a sister organization to the Global Wellness Summit, at which much of the GWI research is introduced. Today's topic, mental wellness, is one of the most important in the wellness space. My guess is you feel that and know that already. This is part of the Wellness Policy series, and today we will be introduced to the Wellness Policy Toolkit for Mental Wellness. I have had a chance to read through the entire report that you will have access to right after this webinar. And I can tell you that it really moved me. And it did so because I remember when we weren't even using the term mental wellness. In fact, it was this research team that did the landmark study that actually introduced the term mental wellness via their report titled Defining the Mental Wellness Economy. That was in 2020. And I would suggest maybe for those of you who are really serious about deep diving into this topic, look at that report also. Today, as a result, many more people are using the term, and the topic has never had greater importance. I hope you will be inspired by this webinar to take action. And thanks for joining us, and back to you, Nancy.
Thank you so much, Susie. I'm going to dispense with my usual introductions and give that time instead to this amazing team. I just want to say that the theme this year of the Global Wellness Summit in St. Andrews, Scotland, is a watershed moment for wellness. The research being released today is most certainly a watershed moment for mental wellness. It's my pleasure now to turn this over to Tonya Callender and Ophelia Young, who will set the table for the research being released today. Ophelia?
Good morning, everyone. It's so exciting that so many of you are joining us, which really indicates to us mental wellness is a really, really important topic in our community. So we have a lot to cover today, and we're going to, this webinar is really, it's going to be in 3 parts. The first part I'm going to cover is a bit of the background and talk about what is mental wellness. And then it will be quickly followed by the business side of mental wellness and the numbers of the mental wellness industry. And then finally, the most importantly, we will get to the main topic of this webinar, which is why we need mental wellness policy and what that means. And as Susie said, we first approached the topic of mental wellness in 2020. And well, you must be familiar with this bubble chart. We call it a bubble chart, the Global Wellness Economy bubble chart, which we started 10 years ago with 10 sectors. And in 2020, at the height of the pandemic, it is very necessary that we add our 11th bubble, mental wellness, which you see here. So as with anything to do with wellness, definitions can be very fuzzy. And so with mental wellness, are we talking about mental health and illness, or are we talking about the subjective well-being, like how Gallup measured happiness across the countries and the whole, the world happiness report and index? So here we have created a simple definition that distills many concepts in the field of health and psychology and from our own understanding and research on wellness. So this definition is, we define mental wellness as an internal resource that help us think, feel, connect, and function. And it is an active process that help us to build resilience, to grow and flourish. You may note that we use the words resource and process here, because we want to convey that mental wellness is dynamic. It is a reservoir that can be depleted and replenished. So how we engage with it can profoundly affect our mental wellness. And mental wellness has 4 components here: think, feel, connect, and function. The thinking is the mental aspect. Think, our cognitive ability, how we process, understand, and use information. So, all of us want our mind to be sharp, or, some of us, sometimes we're concerned about, cognitive function and cognitive decline. Feel is the emotional aspect, how we experience and manage. Connect is the social aspect, our relationships, and function is how we put the pieces together to make decisions and operate on a daily basis. So to summarize, mental wellness is much more than whether we're feeling stressed or sad or lonely or fulfilled. It is a complex interaction of all these cognitive, social, emotional, and psychological dimensions. So next slide I want to show you is what we call the dual continuum model. So how this model, it's a simple way to illustrate how we think about mental wellness as it relates to mental health. And we have introduced this model in our 2020 report by distilling and adapting the work from well-known psychologists. So in this model, you can see we have a horizontal line, which is from one end is mental illness, and to the other end is no mental illness. And then we have a vertical line, which is mental wellness, which goes from the bottom, languishing, to the top, flourishing. The reason we use this model is that we can see how mental wellness and mental health had a more complex interaction that we can see in 4 quadrants. When we look at the right side of this structure, most people in the world do not have diagnosed mental illness. Maybe, only, 80 to 85% of the world of people do not have a clinically diagnosed mental condition, but only 20% of them are at the top right corner where they're flourishing. And unfortunately, many people fall to the bottom right here, that quadrant where we don't have a diagnosed mental condition, but we're languishing. We're going through like stress, loneliness, and maybe disengaged from work. And as we look at the left side of this diagram, there are people who have a diagnosed mental condition, but still a lot of them, more than half of them, 70% of them, can have moderate to flourishing level of mental wellness, meaning they can be happy and functioning well in life, and they can have, very functioning relationships with people. So mental wellness can coexist with mental illness. while we're not suggesting that mental wellness can kill mental illness, many mental wellness practices can help make us more resilient and can even help us reduce the risk and some of the severity and symptoms of mental illness. So bringing more attention to mental wellness can help us to remove the stigma related to mental health, because it is a universal desire for all of us to feel happy and fulfilled, to be connected with people, and also to reduce suffering. So by focusing on these aspirations that we can all share and the different things we could do to improve our mental wellness, we can also help to reduce the stigma associated with mental health issues. So now there are many pathways that we can fortify our mental wellness. And Tonya is going to introduce us to some of them.
So you can see up on the screen, we have slides depicting the pathways to mental wellness. Really, it helps us figure out how we can build up and strengthen this really important resources. And as you can see, there are a lot of ways. In our 2020 report, we discussed these mental wellness pathways, and we leveraged some of the work of GWI's Mental Wellness Initiative. And you can see here, we have 4 dimensions: action and creativity, growth and nourishment, rest, rejuvenation, and connection and meaning. And each of these dimensions has both an internal or mental aspect, as well as an external or physical aspect. Lots of choices here, but we're all different. So our pathways are going to look different. And of course, they could change over time. For some of us, exploring different pathways to find out what we need and what helps us is actually a lifelong journey. I like to say that with the pathways, all we need to do is think about what we enjoy, what relaxes us, what gives us a sense of purpose, helps us feel connected or to our true selves and other people, and then just try and do more of it. Now, intuitively, this makes a lot of sense. But over the years, we've seen rising empirical evidence that these pathways improve both our mental health and our well-being. For example, in the pathway of activity and creativity, numerous studies have shown that movement and exercise create a very positive effect on our mental well-being. So I just wanted to briefly look at 2 of the pathways a little bit more carefully, starting with connection and meaning. You can see that the mental or internal aspect is about finding a sense of purpose, or perhaps feeling as if you're part of something greater. Some would call this spirituality or altruism or even religion. And on the physical external side, we're talking about feeling connected either to others or nature and environment. And this is something that's actually declining in different parts of the world, which is really concerning because studies have shown that feeling connected is really important to our mental well-being. Looking at rest and rejuvenation, some of these techniques that you can see listed here are very familiar. We have techniques and practices such as mindfulness, meditation, and sensory experiences. And there's a lot of empirical evidence that shows that these are very helpful for our mental well-being. In this area, we actually see different professions other than the wellness world that have adopted many of these techniques. For example, in professional sports, you'll see the use of meditation and mindfulness and breath work, but also in the treatment of mental health. With regards to trauma, some of these practices, meditation, mindful movement, and breath work, can help to calm our physical symptoms, allowing the body systems to kind of return to a state where it can function more normally. And neurodivergent individuals or people with neurocognitive disorders can really benefit from some of these sensory practices, helping them to kind of calm their bodies or feel more balanced. So we are seeing a growing amount of products and services that are offered for this pathway. And that directly impacts the size of the mental wellness economy, which I think Catherine is going to talk a little bit about now.
Okay, Thanks, Tonya. So I'm going to jump back to that graphic on the pathways, and I just want to give you a little taste of our data on mental wellness because many of you know us for the data research that we do, and I want to give you some context for it and how it fits into this bigger picture of mental wellness that we've been talking about. So looking again at these pathways, let's look at them from an economic or industry perspective. And when you look at these and how wide-ranging they are, you can see that there are opportunities for businesses and nonprofits and different types of organizations across the entire economy and all of society to possibly play a role in supporting our mental wellness. And I added the red text on the side just to give you a taste of some of the ways that business and organizations, layer into these pathways. So really there's so many ways we can support mental wellness, but there are a set of businesses that are specifically providing some products and services and experiences that are targeting mental wellness directly. And so when we talk about those, what they're doing is they're offering things that are really focusing on helping us reduce stress, building resilience, improving our sleep, preventing cognitive decline, all of those types of things that we might think about in the realm of mental wellness. So when we started looking at those businesses, what we realized is that they typically fit into two of the pathways that we've been talking about. Those have the red box around them. And the two pathways are growth and nourishment and rest and rejuvenation. So that's really how we use the pathways to drill down on how we define and measure what we call the mental wellness industry. We have 4 subsectors that make up the mental wellness industry. You can see them here on the screen, and those 4 subsectors align with those pathways that I just circled on the previous slide. So the 4 subsectors that we measure are self-improvement, meditation and mindfulness, brain-boosting nutraceuticals and botanicals, and then the 4th one is senses, spaces, and sleep. Now, here are our latest numbers for mental wellness. We estimated that it's a $181 billion global industry as of 2022. Now, what we're measuring here is consumer spending on products and services across each of those 4 subsectors. And we are specifically focusing for our numbers on consumer-driven and private sector activities. So these are things that are outside of the medical sphere and they're outside of the mental health treatment sphere. So we don't include things like therapy in these numbers. Now these numbers, they're getting a little bit old now. These are the ones that we released last fall. They're for calendar year 2022. We are currently working on updating all of our data, and the new figures for mental wellness and for all the other sectors are going to be released this upcoming November. So just a closer look at those 4 subsectors. They're obviously very broad and very diverse. Sometimes the boundaries across them are a little bit fuzzy. They're not always easy to define. You can look at the text on the slide here and just get a taste of the breadth of all the different types of products and services and activities and solutions that are falling underneath each of those subsectors. If you're interested in these, I would really encourage you to take a look at that report that Susie mentioned earlier, the Mental Wellness Economy Report, which came out in 2020, because that report has dozens of pages of detailed information about all of these subsectors and definitions and historical evolution and trends. So you'll find a lot more information there. Here's a quick look at our time series data for the mental wellness sector. We started measuring this for the first time for 2019, so that's how far back our data goes. You can see that over the 4 years for which we have data, it's been growing very rapidly, 11.5% average annual growth from 2019 to 2022. Mental wellness has been one of the fastest growing sectors out of the entire wellness economy. It is also one of the sectors, one of the only sectors in the wellness economy that continued its upward trajectory and continued growing strongly throughout the pandemic. The reasons for that are because, everyone started thinking more about mental wellness and, mental health during the pandemic, and people were desperately seeking out solutions to address with the immense stress that they were facing during that time. Also, a lot of the types of things we measure in this sector are things that can be done at home, like meditation or breath work, or they're things we can use tech platforms for, or they're products that we can purchase online. So, since that's what makes up this sector, it helped keep spending high during the COVID shutdowns when, other types of businesses that depend on in-person traffic were not fully operating. Our future growth for this projection for this sector is very high, nearly 13% annual growth through 2027. Just as a comparison, global GDP is projected to grow by 4.7% during this time period. So mental wellness projection is more than double that. Just to wrap up on the data, I want to pop the bubble chart back up again. Again, just to give you the picture of how mental wellness fits into the overall wellness economy. You can see it's actually one of the smaller sectors. It ranks 8th in size out of the 11 sectors that we measure. Now, that's the data. There is a lot more to mental wellness than the economic side of it. So I want to turn things now back to Tonya to expand that and get into the policy discussion.
Thanks, Catherine. So good news, right? The mental wellness sector is growing and more people are spending money on products and services. So why do we need a toolkit? Well, we know that around the world in our communities, we're seeing significant threats to our mental well-being. Stress, overwork, rising rates of anxiety and depression, feelings of isolation and loneliness. And these are all creating significant social and economic costs. And one estimate is that the cost of just anxiety and depression globally is about $1 trillion every year. So there's a critical need for all of us to work to protect our mental health and well-being. Now, Ophelia talked about mental wellness as a resource that can promote our well-being. And looking at these pathways again up here, you can see that many of them are free or low cost, like being out in nature, socializing with friends, or listening to music. And some of them are just changes in lifestyle or behavioral choices, such as healthy eating or exercising. But given these rising threats to our mental well-being, and also the limited amount of mental health resources that are available to most of us, it really does make sense to have more people working to support their mental wellness. But unfortunately, not enough people understand that mental wellness is a key resource or tool for promoting and treating mental health. And many of them lack opportunities to kind of build up this resource. So there are many people out there in the world who could be using mental wellness pathways to build resilience and promote their mental health, but they're not doing that. And this is a problem. And we think that this mental wellness policy toolkit that I'm about to talk about offers some solutions. So getting into the toolkit a little bit, what does it accomplish? Well, first of all, it explains why we need to take action to support everyone's mental wellness. And it talks about how we can use mental wellness policies to improve not only just our well-being, but also alleviate the growing societal and economic costs of worsening mental health. Now, specifically, the toolkit gives some examples of programs and initiatives that can help to bring the benefits of mental wellness to more people, especially those who need it the most. Now, I know that when people hear the word policy, they immediately think about actions taken by governments and policymakers. And they might be, some of you might be saying, oh, this report is not for me. But actually, this toolkit is designed not just for government policymakers, because we know that different stakeholders, businesses, community organizations, media, research groups, and healthcare organizations really should be involved in mental wellness policy, because all of these groups influence our mental well-being, and all of them can take action to strengthen our mental wellness. So let's just, for example, think about the private sector. So we know that wellness producers and service providers directly impact mental wellness through their availability that they make for different techniques and practices, and also through their pricing. But other businesses, such as tech companies, healthcare companies, building and design firms, all affect how we can engage in mental wellness opportunities. And remember, businesses are also employers, right? So they shape a community's culture and the work environment. And that's going to also affect our mental wellness. So just regardless of your role and the organization you belong to, this toolkit can be relevant for you. And just before I get into the specifics of the toolkit, I want to emphasize that this is not a mental health policy report. This toolkit focuses on strategies to strengthen our mental wellness. And it has a very specific approach. It emphasizes using existing community resources as well as public and private partnerships to improve access. And it also highlights the importance of having empirical evidence to guide policy recommendations and actions. So for the toolkit, we have a list of some of our recommendations. Basically, the focus for these recommendations is on decreasing barriers and eliminating some of the challenges to mental wellness promotion. And you can see some of them here. I'm not going to go into all of them in great detail, but I thought that we could just briefly touch on some of them. First off, you can see that we talk about raising awareness and improving knowledge, which makes sense. But I want to emphasize it's not just about letting people know what mental wellness is. It's also about providing education and training, allowing people to develop skills and practice some of the techniques so they can build up this resource. Training in particular can be a very important way to spread the adoption of techniques and activities. Now, I'm not just talking about training for individuals. In our report, we discuss training professionals in the community who are already working to support the well-being of others in some way. And second, you see that we talk about improving access. The toolkit talks about low-cost ways to bring activities and mental wellness supporting environments to more people via arts and cultural engagement activities, improving access to nature, and also the responsible use of technology. Now, one example of a program to increase access that is discussed in our toolkit is social prescribing. So many of you might have heard about doctors who write prescriptions for exercise. Well, social prescribing programs help people access a community's existing support systems and helps them engage in mental wellness supporting activities such as volunteering, physical activity, being out in nature, and other group activities. Social prescribing has been around for several years, and you can find social prescribing programs in a variety of countries, including the United Kingdom, China, and Japan. These programs are being used to help people who are dealing with anxiety, loneliness, and facing other mental health challenges. The nice thing about social prescribing is it can be used with several of the pathways. For example, let's just explain how it works. Say you have an older person who might have gone through a significant loss or is dealing with a major life change. They might be feeling anxious or having feelings of sadness or depression. And we know that this age group actually is more likely to visit a physician than a mental health professional if they're experiencing these symptoms. So if they go to a doctor, the doctor can sit down and write them a referral that they can take to an organization who is people who can help them find existing community social services, resources, and activities that can help them. In this case of this older person, perhaps referring them to a creative arts pottery class so they can find friends, learn a hobby, engage their mind. And this is going to improve their mental wellness and promote their mental well-being. Older adults are a really good example of a population that sometimes has a harder time accessing mental wellness opportunities. And the toolkit does stress the importance of expanding access to all populations, people who are physically isolated, economically disadvantaged, racial, ethnic minorities, and also people with disabilities. People with disabilities are often isolated already, and they also have a harder time getting to and actively participating in some mental wellness activities. So the toolkit talks about providing equitable access to nature and transport to arts engagement or some type of activities. Also providing more social support and opportunities for connection. And creating more socially connected communities is also a key priority for us because we know that loneliness and isolation negatively affect our mental health and well-being, and it is definitely a growing problem in some places. So the toolkit provides recommendations to help people find connections. And it talks about another interesting way to get people to connect with each other, and that is friendship benches. And Friendship Benches was a program that was started in Zimbabwe as a way to address the lack of mental health professionals in that country. And what they did was they created a bench in a public space, but a safe space where a trained volunteer can make themselves available to passersby who want to sit and talk. And what they did was they made use of an important resource in their community, the aunties or the wise women, who could come and sit on these benches, listen to people, and offer comfort and suggestions. And this worked really well to reach more people who were facing mental health challenges. Well, this concept spread to other countries, and it really has been transformed to help address different needs in places, for example, such as here in the United States, where we have friendship benches designed to improve social connection. The important thing to remember is that we just need someone who is a member of the community who the target population trusts and can be trained to sit on that bench. So you could find older adults sitting on benches outside adult community centers or on college campuses. We have people who are trained to sit and help their peers who might be dealing with stress, loneliness, or depression. And also you see that we specifically discuss children and youth in this toolkit. That's because in many countries, our younger generations have been reporting higher rates of anxiety and sadness and feelings of loneliness. And that's because they're worried about their opportunities, different political and social conflicts that are ongoing, climate change, and they also face significant challenges to their self-esteem. The toolkit talks about how mental wellness can help them to develop social skills and support systems and learn to explore their own pathways so they can help to build up resiliency and promote their mental health throughout their lifetime. It provides suggestions, for example, how to use volunteering to learn to practice social skills, develop support networks, and feel more connected to other people. And volunteering is also very important because it has its own particular benefits to both mental and physical health and self-esteem. And finally, I just wanted to briefly talk about something that you don't see mentioned here, but that is the role of technology, which can be a very thorny issue. And we do spend some time in the toolkit talking about the pros and cons, because technology is certainly something that we recommend for helping people who right now don't have access to mental wellness activities to learn about the techniques and maybe reach out and become connected with other people. However, as you've heard in the news lately, technology can be very much of a threat, especially for our younger generation, because of bullying and very harmful, I guess, activities, not just with regards to exploitation and threats, but it also takes these young people away from learning social skills and being out in nature and exercising. So we do talk about the pros and cons in technology. Finally, that's just a quick taste of what's in the toolkit. But there are a couple of takeaways that I want to leave with everyone. First of all, just to remember that we made this toolkit because we wanted to offer a solution for a growing and costly global problem, which is our declining mental well-being. And this toolkit isn't just for policymakers, it's for public health officials, businesses, community organizations, and even the media. And what is really special about it is it gives a compelling argument for why we need mental wellness. It helps readers to recognize that mental wellness by itself is an important resource that promotes our mental health and well-being. And it shows us that we can use targeted strategies and programs and activities to improve our mental wellness by providing a variety of policy examples. And it contains resources for further research and study. So, if you want to inform yourself about the benefits of mental wellness, if you want to advocate for programs or policies, or work to collaborate to invest some resources or support your workers, your neighbors, improve your community's well-being, you should really take some time to look at this toolkit. And before I end, I want to know if Philia and Catherine have anything to add.
Tanya, I was thinking, just one of the things I think probably became clear when I was talking about the data and, when we talk about mental wellness conceptually is just how much it overlaps with all dimensions of our wellness and all aspects of life, from a conceptual point of view, but also, on the industry side, mental wellness, activities, they overlap with all the different sectors in the wellness economy as well. So it might be interesting for this group, because we have a little bit of time, if you went into, if you want to talk a little bit more about item 5 on the list of policies, because that's really where we capture a lot of those overlaps, because I think it's great for people to understand that, you don't have to be a mental wellness business to be participating and supporting this for people. So maybe we want to spend a few minutes on that.
Certainly. Item 5, if you can see, talks about making sure that other wellness sectors support our mental well-being. And we also add in the public health sector because we really do feel that in order to be successful, we have to have a very holistic approach. And the public health sector, of course, plays a very important role in helping us with our mental health and well-being. I talked about somebody going to a doctor earlier, but mental health professionals, especially mental health professionals, are on the front line dealing with all of our challenges. And if they understand, appreciate, and can incorporate mental wellness practices, not just into their treatments plans, but also help their clients to understand the importance of it and help them figure out their pathways, we can really go a long way to improving mental wellness for everybody. And that's one particular sector. But of course, when you talk about living in a community, there are a lot of external factors that affect our mental well-being, where we live, whether or not we have access to environments that support our mental wellness, whether we can actually be physically active outside, and also what we put in our bodies, thinking about those pathways, thinking about the nutrition aspect. So all of these sectors are actually important and should also support our mental wellness, specifically thinking about the built environments. We want to make sure that architects and planners really think about how they can help to create, for example, a sense of community in neighborhoods, and also help to connect us to some of these wonderful arts and social engagements. If you live in a rural area, or if you live in an area that doesn't really have a lot of public transportation, how are you going to get to some of these arts venues? How are you going to go and be able to be out in nature in a park? So that's also something that the report really talks about, the built environment. And finally, you think about physical activity and nutrition. We know physical activity is important for our mental health, but we still need to make sure that everybody can participate and be physically active. And it's a really great way for local businesses and especially fitness providers to get involved in supporting their community and helping them see that there are different techniques and practices they can have, and opening up their spaces for group yoga or mindful movement, not just to create more of a sense of community, but to help people kind of move forward and improve mental wellness, because we know it's a collective problem. And if your neighbors, if your neighborhood is not resilient, that's going to affect you. And finally, again, also with regards to nutrition, Catherine talked a lot about the different pharmaceuticals and different types of supplements that we use. And that industry in particular really benefits from strong empirical evidence And we definitely feel that when you're talking about mental wellness policy, empirical evidence is so important, not just for consumers, for businesses to gain their trust. So empirical evidence, especially with regards to nutrition and supplements, is something that the toolkit spends quite a bit of time talking about.
Thank you so much. That was absolutely incredible. Susie, do you have anything you want to comment on or ask before we open it up a little bit?
No, maybe just talk about the slide, and then I'm glad that you'll be able to open it up.
Okay, great.
So just a reminder, this toolkit is part of our policy series. We really feel that wellness environments and as well as our individual behaviors can be shaped by specific policies. So we have started a policy series that is systematically discussing different wellness sectors and how they can shape and improve our mental wellness. So this toolkit is the third in our policy series. We've already have one on physical activity and wellness in tourism, and they are available for free on our website. And I highly encourage you to check them out. Hopefully going forward, you will be able to also look at wellness at work and the built environment, so you can get a deeper understanding of how policies in these specific sectors can help move wellness forward.
Thank you so much. And as soon as this call is over, I believe you can go ahead to the website and click on the link and get this series and this report today, which is being released. You're also going to get a follow-up email, and that will have a link to it as well, and a link to this call and the chat, which is always fascinating and filled with good information. And we've got some hands raised. I just want to go to one quick question first that Lynn Brick had put in the chat about whether or not the numbers include children and youth when you did the measuring. Tonya, can you, or Catherine?
Well, from the numbers perspective, I mean, when we're measuring things, we're measuring, people spending money on products and services and experiences in the economy. So to the extent that that spending is for children, sure, yes. We're not segmenting who's spending the money and is it adults only, is it children? If someone's paying for a meditation class or, buying supplements for their kid, that is absolutely captured in the numbers. But I think when you're talking about children and youth, I mean, the importance is far beyond, what those numbers are capturing. And it is a very specific focus in the toolkit. I think Tonya touched on that during her comments, that one of the 5 policy domains that we focus on there is children and youth specifically. So yes, very important.
Yeah. Okay, terrific. Thank you. Professor Paul, I'm going to ask if you, when you unmute, you've got 30 seconds to ask your question. So just tell us who you are, where you're calling from, and ask your question. You're muted, Paul.
Dr. Jonathan Paul DeVierville, calling from the Hill Country in Texas, where it's very hot. Anyways, this is absolutely brilliant. I've been in the industry, in the profession, since the early 70s.
Just going to ask the question.
The question is, what is the relationship of mental wellness to consciousness? I didn't hear the role of conscious and the unconscious and the psyche. I mean, this is such a great comprehensive study.
Okay, so consciousness and mental wellness. Tonya?
Okay, so I hope that I can answer your question. I know that if you can kind of think back to the pathways, we talked about the mental internal and the external physical. And I like to think of the mental internal as your thoughts and your feelings, right? That is your thinking, your consciousness, whereas the external would be more your behavioral choices, even though it might be a little confusing because in the framework we do talk about hobbies, but that's all kind of helping with cognition and thought and consciousness. Certainly with regards to spirituality or altruism, that consciousness, whether it's individual or feeling part of a greater consciousness, would definitely be the kind of internal.
Yeah, that's.
Okay, and thank you, Paul, thank you.
The
Ophelia, did you want to
unconscious.
add something to that?
Oh yeah, it is when we have that dual continuum on not the mental illness to no mental illness is really from languishing to flourishing. And we want to think of flourishing as, for some people, it might be in a flow state of, playing music. And for some people, it could be when they're in some higher consciousness, when they do their meditative practices and transcendence and, you name it, right? Like people, it's all very individualized. It's sort of how people, like see internally, they are feeling, a flourishing level of fulfillment. And sometimes it's hard to talk about these mental state without getting into spirituality and, wellness, and spirituality had a strong connection. But then, it really depends on the culture and religion and people's background and preferences. So,
Yeah,
it's
the role of
Thank you.
dreams.
No, thank you. Okay, we're gonna get the next
Okay.
question. Please mute yourself after you've finished. Thank you so much, Professor Kim Marshall. 30 seconds.
Hi there. It was so powerful. How can we help spread the word that this report is not just for policy wonks? Because at the title, you think, well, maybe it won't apply to me, but I think it applies to everybody.
It definitely does apply to everybody. And we actually spent a few pages in our report talking about who it applies to and why. So hopefully if you download it, you will really kind of get a sense of what kind of arguments you could make, how you can advocate to other people about the importance of forming partnerships and getting other groups to work across sectors to move the needle.
And I will just say that internally, we've been talking a lot about how to get this report, which we feel is incredibly important, out to lots of different people. I urge all of you to send that link. It's downloadable for free. Send that link to businesses and people that and spread the word. Every one of the people who registered for this call, which is well over 1,000, and imagine the ripple effect of all of you doing that. So all the help we can get, we will take. Bruce, you're up for 30 seconds. You're muted. Bruce, you're muted.
Yeah, Bruce Wayne Molesky from Austin, Texas, and I have a question about the revolution. I think you're starting a revolution. Okay, well, you look back 50 years ago for the fitness revolution.
You got to just ask a question. I'm sorry.
Aerobics became the thing, so I want to know how you get the revolution to go. What is the fuel? This is part of the fuel, but there's a whole lot.
Okay, how do we get this to be a revolution and not just a report?
Well, I think Nancy touched on it. You are our soldiers, right? Getting that word out, helping people understand. And one thing that is really special about how we design our toolkits is we do always provide a case or present a very clear argument for why this is important. And the Mental Wellness Policy Toolkit, like the other ones, has a good section on that I think is very clear that you can use to advocate for change.
Any of the other researchers? Okay, Mahendra, unmute yourself and take 30 seconds for your question. You're muted.
Human well-being comprises of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Everyone has wisdom as human beings and life's experiences and life impact on you. We need to talk a little bit about the self-healing power of one's logic. And I think that is an area.
So what is your question to the researchers?
We have not talked about self-healing power of an individual. We are talking of all the externalities, the data.
Okay, okay, thank you. So self-healing as opposed to the more external.
Both, I would say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think both are important. And also, I'm going to kind of refer back to our pathways where we do talk about the mental or internal. I think you're very correct that we're not just talking about external environments. We're talking about individual thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And we know specifically with regards to mental well-being that there are people who can find their own inner strength, not just to overcome challenges, but to create very different change and surpass, I guess, where they were before. We've seen that in trauma victims. So I think you're very right that it is both. And I think if you look at the report, you'll see that we do touch on both aspects.
Rich Carmona, are you still on the call? And if you are, I wonder if you could just for a moment, give us a little perspective on how you start a revolution. You have done it. Rich Carmona is on our GWI board. He is also the 17th Surgeon General of the United States, and he has put some information in the chat. I don't know, Rich, if you're still on the call, and if you are, would you unmute and tell us how we make this more known and how we, mobilize our community and beyond?
Thank you, Sergeant Major. So good to see you and all of our colleagues around the world. Actually, the challenge is, how do we democratize this now? This work, first of all, I want to sing praises of our researchers who are defining this space, as well as building our brand to be a much more stronger and a brand that is recognized worldwide. Somebody mentioned a little earlier about an army. We are the army. We are the ones that have to, in our own networks, talk about this information. Through Nancy and Susie at our meetings, we do presentations, we do panel discussions, we bring in thought leaders, and the GWI board is very active in this. So I feel very good about this because this has moved us a long way. In the chat, I put a couple of things I did with Surgeon General Satcher and myself when I was Surgeon General, where we did the first report on the health of the disabled, where we said, well, these are not disabled. These are people that are abled in a different way. Let's get rid of the stigma. Okay. And we also connecting with community, building social networks, all of those things before they were politically correct. We were trying to move, but it was hard to get traction in the world then. We are fortunate that all of you are so passionate and have extensive networks around the world that this is our time to make this happen now.
Thank you, Rich. Always inspiring. Any last thoughts from our research team before we end this?
Nancy, I thought I'd jump in because I did see a question in the comment boxes a while ago that I thought I could give a little more insights on. I think someone had asked, if mental wellness is so essential and so important, why did it take us till 2020 to start measuring it? And actually, in our GWI newsletter this week, there's going to be a write-up that addresses that as well, but I'll give you the highlights. We know mental wellness is essential. If you think about, you've probably seen the wellness wheel, some version of it. We have a version of it we use. Unfortunately, I don't have the graphic to put up there right now, but there are many dimensions of wellness. Mental is one of them, also physical, spiritual, environmental, and so on. So from a conceptual perspective, mental wellness has always been there for anyone who works in this field, and it's always been in our construct as we define and talk about wellness. When we say we didn't start covering it till 2020, what we mean is we didn't start measuring it and putting dollar signs on it, which is an entirely separate thing from, the conceptual idea of wellness and mental wellness. The reason it took that long is because, when we look at these concepts from an economic perspective, there has to be an economy there to measure. There need to be businesses that we can define in that space. They need to be specifically selling things to consumers and marketing them with language that says this is for mental wellness. And this is so current now and it's everywhere, but if you think back 10 years ago, it was not. Even people have been meditating for thousands of years. It came to the Western world, the United States, in the 70s. It took off and became mainstream in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So there's just been a huge shift in the last decade. So for us to measure it and put dollar signs on it, there had to be a robust economy. And the point at which we felt like that happened was in 2020. Before that, it was just too amorphous to really come up with a definition and, find data sources and, things to measure. So that's why that happened in 2020. We are responding to what we see in the marketplace. And, it's always been there, but it really has gelled as an economic sector in more recent times. So I hope that gives you a sense of, the progression of how we've been looking at it.
I just want to add
Susie, you want to say something?
I wanted to ask if Lynn Brick could share what she has put into the marketplace, because it's a good example of someone that saw a need and has put in the marketplace something that wasn't there before with your certification. Lynn, do you mind sharing about that?
No, we're honored. And we are doing a MWI Mental Wellbeing Initiative of the Global Wellness Institute webinar in July 18th. So look out for that. Basically, what Victor and I, my husband, started the John W. Brick Mental Health Foundation, but there was a huge need to help educate folks on things they can do to understand the dual continuum and understand that they, not only for themselves, their circle of influence, but also the people that they serve, whether it's clients, members, students. We have created a mental well-being certification. First of all, out of the gate is for fitness professionals, which is what we're going to focus on for July 18. But I know Donna Valpetta has also created a certification for mental health or wellness literacy, and which is phenomenal as well. And then our intention with the JWB Foundation is to create other certifications for other industries that are reaching for what they can do to help their employees and their students, their constituents, first responders. There are just so many people that really need all of us. Thank you.
Lynn, can you just say who you are and your foundation?
Oh, sorry, Lynn Brick, co-founder along with my husband, Victor Brick, of the John W. Brick Mental Health Foundation.
Okay, thank you so much. And Ophelia, you were going to say something as well.
I just want to say that, we are known for measuring the global wellness economy. So, right, like when we look at the sector, we talk about what it is and mental wellness or tourism, and then we put out a number on the size of the industry. But really the mission of the Global Wellness Institute is to bring wellness to all. And so we have to acknowledge that we cannot just rely on just business and economy, because there are just so many things, if it's only like pay to play, we're not going to be able to do that. So often when we have a number and then people get excited, or you think, why is this so small? The economy of that sector doesn't mean, the access. It doesn't, people, if they could access a lot of these things for free, maybe we will have a smaller, business for that. So I just want to say that, because sometimes, we are representative of the industry as well, because we, put out these numbers, but at the same time, we're doing all these things. So the policy series is really an important effort of us to make sure we don't focus on the money who is being able to pay, but what is, what is the responsibility of all of us? And what is the right of people to have access to nature, to have space, to have, to have clean air and the things that kind of make them well, even when they cannot pay. So that's really.
That is the absolute perfect note on which to end. It is exactly 12 o'clock. We like to deliver you back to your other life on time. So thank you to Tonya, Catherine, Ophelia for doing this, for putting this together. Heidi's sharing now the QR code. Go ahead and download your copy. And we thank you all so much for being here, and see you next time. Please unmute yourself and give a round of applause.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Great job.
Enjoy
summer. Be well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank
bye-bye.
you.